Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Bushman, and this is the Intentionally Intuitive podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the individual life path forecast for the new moon solar eclipse that's happening on October 14th or 15th, depending on where you live within the world. So we have officially entered eclipse season. So this is big energy. And now with these eclipses, we have an eclipse on the 14th, 15th, obviously, the new moon solar eclipse that we'll be talking about today. And then at the end of the month, I believe on the 29th, we have a lunar eclipse. So we'll talk about that as it gets closer. But these eclipses are big energy. And so this new moon eclipse could be bringing in a new storyline that we'll be working with for the next 6 months, next year, or for the next 18 months. And the eclipse at the end of the month, which we'll go into more detail about as it gets closer, has a likelihood to potentially close out a cycle we've been moving through for the last 6 months or a year or 18 months. And so you'll know as it pertains to your own storyline, sort of how it's affecting you, how it's coming in. But this new moon solar eclipse, again, has the potential to sort of unfold over the next 6 months or up to a year, potentially. And so pay attention to what comes in for you. Now, you may not see it come to full fruition or hit you like a lightning bolt on the day of. However, you can kind of come back to this reading potentially and see it as what was initiated, what was something that came in sort of as an understanding that, okay, this is the storyline. This is the seed that the story is going to be planted around. Because you'll have some kind of indication. It's very likely that you'll have some kind of indication as far as what this storyline is going to be about. So again, it's going to be an unfolding. So be patient with yourself as you move through it. Be open to what and who comes in for you over the coming months, because it's all going to be relevant and it's all going to play into a bigger storyline. So without further ado, let's take a look. Life Path 33.6. So this eclipse for you all is bringing in a really interesting dynamic. You're working with the energies of the 1 and the 2, and your animal wisdom message comes from the moth. So this is really interesting. So we have the 1 energy, which is all about self, identity, being assertive, going after what you want, self-awareness, self-driven, your own individual passion, your place in the world, taking up space type thing, being very independent, and while also honoring interdependency, right? Not independent to the point where it's like, I don't need anyone. But there's like definitely this call towards independence with the 1 energy, honoring your own contribution, your uniqueness, your genius, all of these things, and not diminishing or suppressing or minimizing those things, right? Like being very self-aware and being very confident in your place in the world. That's the 1 energy. Then the 2 energy is about relationships, connectivity, balance, harmony, bringing people together, connectivity. Did I say that? Yes. Anything that moves away from separation is with a 2 energy, and it typically is going to be with other people. Again, relationships, how we relate to others, and not losing ourselves in those relationships, but contributing and sort of being a part of those relationships. And what does that look like? And what feels good? And what feels like an equal exchange of energy? Because when we have just the 1, it's about self, right? We have all of our energy. When it's about the 2, it's about others and ourselves, right? And that connectivity. And so it becomes this focus on an equal exchange of energy where we're not over giving and we're not over receiving. And the same for the other person. Becomes balanced. And so it's interesting because with this eclipse, it's forcing you to look at something where it's out of balance, right? Where either you're losing yourself in other connections, you're overgiving, or you're over receiving, right? Like, are you constantly sort of in victim mentality of the world owes me, or like everything bad happens to me. And then people have to show up to help you to get out of that, right? Constantly. But that becomes an extreme of receiving. And so where's the giving? Or is it a situation where you are just constantly showing up for the other person and doing and doing and doing and doing to the point that it becomes self-sacrificial? Neither of those scenarios are healthy or balanced. And so this is really, that's just an example, right? But there's so many ways that this could come through, and it depends on your own personal journey and circumstances. But when we have the 1 and the 2 together, it's reminding us to be very conscious of how we're showing up to ourselves, how we're honoring ourselves, and how we're showing up to other connections, and how we're honoring those connections. And is it an equal exchange of energy with those connections? Because if it's not an equal exchange of energy, majority of the time, now there's times when the other person will have to carry more or you'll have to carry more. I mean, that's just life. But it should balance out. Any connection where one person is carrying the burden and the other person continues to offload the burden becomes an imbalanced exchange of energy. And the goal is to have a balanced, equal exchange of energy, right? So I do think that there's going to be something here for you to look at if this pertains to you. Now, if you're somebody who's like, I feel pretty good with all my connections, I feel pretty good with myself, then you probably won't feel this energy very strongly. And maybe you'll be asked to hold space for people who are moving through this. But for those of you where some of your connections feel very one-sided, or like you're constantly showing up and giving and doing and carrying the brunt or the burden, it's going to really ask you to first take a look at yourself, be very honest with what you need to thrive, and then look at your relationships and where's there this imbalance, and what are the modifications or the conversations that need to be had. And then you're going to have to, take the reins and make that happen, because this is your experience, right? This is your journey. You're at the helm of the ship. And I think that you'll feel the pressure over the next 6 months to a year to do that. Either the frustration and the resentment will get so strong that you'll be sort of forced to do something, or the suffering, right? As I think it's Eckhart Tolle that likes to say, when the suffering becomes so great, we choose to make a change. Or the other person will just be like, I can't keep giving, I can't keep doing, or it will just feel out of balance for both people, and someone will get to the point of making a change. Because in any connection with ourselves as well, with any connection, if it's not good for one person, it's not good for the other. Like if there's toxicity, there's toxicity. If there's an imbalance of energy, both people are going to feel it differently potentially, but both people are going to feel it. And so, we can't rely on the other person to make those changes or do what we feel they need to do to create that balance. We only have control over our own actions. And so there may be places within your life where you have to stand up and put yourself first, or recognize where maybe you've been over receiving. And this other person has been carrying the load. And where is it that you can sort of share that burden, so to speak, right? And share the triumphs and all of that as well, right? When I say equal exchange of energy, I mean across all spectrums. The other thing I wanted to mention, which is interesting, is with moth energy, I definitely get this energy of like self-sacrificing, right? And so what I think about is for you all, be really careful that you're not so focused on going towards the light that you basically commit this your own death, right? Like your own, and I would say like your own emotional death, or your own emotional, downfall, all those things. Because you think about the moth, they'll go towards any light. And if that light's a fire, guess what? They're not coming back from that. So there's definitely something here about, which is why moth can sometimes represent like death. And it's more metaphorical. well, for the moth, it can be very literal, but for, us, it's more metaphorical, where it's like, where is it that like we keep going towards the light, thinking it's what's the right thing to do, but ends up being a fire, and we sort of extinguish ourselves, or our energy, we deplete ourselves. And so I do think that there's something here for you to look at with, you might very well think, I'm going towards the light, I'm doing something really good here. But you really have to pause and ask yourself, okay, but how do I feel? Am I depleted? Am I like wore out? Do I feel overly burdened? Do I feel like I'm always sacrificing or compromising? Because that's an artificial light then, right? So if you're not feeling fulfilled, gratitude, gracious, like all these things, if that light is not filling you up and it's depleting you, it's an artificial light. And so there needs to be some modifications and adjustments so that you no longer go towards that light and you go towards the more authentic light, which again comes back to giving out of the goodness of your heart. It feels good. It fills you up, all those things. Anytime that we give and we feel resentment or obligation or burden, we're just giving from the ego. We're not giving from the heart. And there's a big difference there. And it can be reflected in how we feel. So I definitely think with moth coming through, with this 1 and the 2 energy, it's definitely asking you to make sure that the light that you're moving towards is one that fills you up and doesn't burn you or deplete you. And that you're finding a healthy balance between self and others, me and we. Are you creating enough ample space for solitude, for coming back to yourself, honoring yourself, all of those things? And are you creating enough ample space to sort of integrate and connect with people, collaborate, work with others, see other people's points of view? Sort of be the observer and help to bring harmony to situations and an equal exchange of energy. And that's what I keep coming back to, especially with relationships and connectivity. I think for the most part, like most people are pretty self-aware. Most humans are pretty self-aware. We're pretty aware of what we need, what we want, what we desire, because it's us for the most part, right? But where we struggle is in our connections. We usually project out to the other person what it is that we need, assuming it's also what they need without having a conversation. Or we just show up and start giving, but are we giving what that person actually needs? Like, did we have a conversation about it? And are we open to hearing not only, what they need, but also what they want, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, it's just life. But it's one of these things where it's like, for you all, there's a strong emphasis on it for the next maybe 6 months to 18 months. So I think you'll feel it, right? And it is progressive. It'll happen over time. But just pay attention to these areas as you continue to move forward. Because you might be a 33-6, or meant to be stepping into the 33 energy, but that doesn't mean that you sacrifice yourself. That doesn't mean that, and it also doesn't mean that you become sort of holier than thou and expect others to continue to show up in a way that's unhealthy for them and you, right? Not saying that y'all are doing that, but that is a side of the 33 that's, as you continue to move through the journey and overcoming the sort of like putting the ego in the back seat, right? And allowing the soul to drive, you can have experiences like that. And there's no shame in that. It's just part of the journey where you learn something more about yourself and other people and how to connect. So this can be a really transformative period. But there's definitely something here because it's the new moon, so new ways of looking at things, new initiations, new starting points, and it's a solar eclipse. So the solar, sun, vitality, life force, passion, ego, ourselves, right? And so it's being eclipsed out. So for a period of time, and then it's coming back to shine. So I think metaphorically, that can also translate into the journey ahead for you all. It's like, what area of your life has been eclipsed out that is slowly, suffocating you or, like diminishing your life force? your energy, your stamina, all these things, your vitality, because that needs to be modified or changed, right? And then you can come back and shine. So big transformative energy for you, 33 sixes. I know I say that pretty much every reading, but that's part of the journey. But you guys are doing great. And yeah, just make sure that the light that you're moving towards makes sense, feels good, fills you up, and isn't burning you. So, all right, 33s, take care. Bye for now.